Kia ora, my friends. Welcome back to Drop Balls and Big Calls, and welcome to NRL Grand Final weekend. Hence the Storm jersey, if you're watching. Today's conversation, though, is one that truly hits at the heart of why this podcast exists. It's about resilience, love, legacy, and the lengths that a parent will go for their child. Boris Struk is the founder of Muscular Dystrophy Australia, but more importantly, he's a father whose life changed forever the moment his son Ryan was diagnosed with muscular dystrophy. Faced with a devastating reality and a healthcare system that offered little hope, Boris channeled his heartbreak into purpose, from raising over $43 million to building a national support network, establishing a research centre, and running more than 100 life-changing camps for families. Boris has shown what's possible when determination meets love. In this episode, we talk about Ryan's story, the creation of Muscular Dystrophy Australia, and the power of believing that nothing is impossible. This is a story about fighting for your family, creating change against the odds, and turning pain into purpose. I couldn't imagine anything more devastating than losing a child. And this conversation with Boris was really special to me and really straight from the heart. I hope you get a lot out of this one. And I'd love to hear your feedback after the show. Boris Struk, welcome to Drop Balls and Big Calls.
I haven't dropped mine, they're still there.
Nice one, mate. Well, this one's really special to me. We met back in 2016. I think I've got the year right. I was doing a fundraiser for Muscular Dystrophy Australia, which you founded and ran for many decades. It was just, I mean, you know how important that cause is to me, and to be doing this today with you, it's very, very surreal. So thank you very much for joining me.
It's the greatest pleasure.
Thanks.
I hope.
It will be, I'm sure. So you've retired from MDA now?
Yep, 2019.
2019, yeah. So how does life look for you these days?
Look, retired 2019, mid-year, like end of June, and I was looking forward to spending a lot of time with Ryan in his shed. He bought a lot of equipment, mill, lathe, table saw, bandsaw, you name the equipment. 50 square metre shed. And I was really looking forward to spending time with Ryan in the shed. Now, we're one side of us, we're both similar, quite driven people. He was unbelievably driven. And every now and again and used to employ a retired fitter and turner, Tony. And Tony had the patience of a saint, and he knew how to do things. And he knew that to do this particular task, the sequence was A, B, C, and D. And Ryan would say, look, I prefer if you went to C, did that bit first, then came back and did A, B, and then jumped to D. Wasn't the right way of doing it, but that's how Ryan wanted it. And Tony said, hey, that's what you want. Tony's attitude was, he used to say to me all the time, I was Ryan's hands. I was not his mentor. I was not there to teach him. Sure, I'd show him things to do and how to do it. But he was amazing, and that was, it was fantastic. But we celebrated Ryan's 40th on the 16th of Feb in 2020. And that gave us a lot of pleasure, because I think the hardest words I ever heard were when Ryan was seeing the specialist after going through a journey of, GPs and, them saying, oh, he's only clumsy, there's nothing wrong with him and so on. And he was sitting, down here on a stool, and they did all the tests. And he said, oh, Mr. Struk, go home, enjoy Ryan. He'll be dead by the time he's 14 or 15. That was it. That was how. What do you mean? Oh, he's got muscular dystrophy. And it was with such arrogance. It was with such...
No empathy whatsoever.
No empathy. Now, if you jump forward to the opening ceremony of the Sydney Olympics, we had a function from the research centre at the Pump House Hotel in Nicholson Street, opposite exhibition buildings. And I'm finished up, just happened to be talking to this neurologist, those little round tables that you stand next to with your drink. And we had a very robust, wasn't an argument, very robust discussion. And I said to him, what you did, you really needed to buy Dale Carnegie's book on how to win friends and influence people, because what you did was just not on. And he agreed to disagree. And so I think the worst words I heard at that stage were, what the prognosis was for Ryan. And for him to celebrate his 40th birthday in February 2020 was extraordinary. It was such a milestone. We had family, friends, his carers and so on. We all gathered around. We had a fantastic day, and his cousin baked a beautiful birthday cake, but she made a tape measure on there, a saw, a hammer,
cool.
all edible stuff, because that's what he was into. So that was fantastic. And then, of course, COVID came along, and we were locked up, and we were locked up, and we were locked up. And 9th of October, midnight, the carer knocked on the bedroom door and said, "Oh, Ryan's got a blood nose." Went in there and cleaned him up, and he was all right. And he didn't want to go to sleep, so he sat up all night. Not sat up, laying in bed, talking to his carer, Karen, till the wee hours, and at about 5:30, 6 o'clock, knock, knock. Nosebleed again. We rang the ambulance. Ambulance came around, took him. I said, "Look, we'd recommend he goes to the hospital." Ambulance loaded Ryan into the ambulance, and he was saying, "Oh, don't forget to bring my laptop because I've got to pay the carers," because he was self-managed with this NDIS funding. "I've got to pay the carers, I've got to do this, I've got to do that." And this is while he's being transported. And going down Bell Street, I was sitting in the passenger seat, and Georgie, who was the female ANBO, she said, leaned over her shoulder and said, "Ryan, it's going to be a bit bumpy for a minute. We've got to go over the tram lines and train lines." Ryan said something, because his speech was just a whisper. And he said something, and Karen burst out laughing. I said, "What did he say?" And he said, "Dad, next time you take me to hospital, can you organise the air ambulance so I can fly there in the helicopter?" Even on the way to hospital, he still had his, sense of humour. We got there, had no idea what was in store. We spent time with him, but he was that dog tired. Leon came. We went downstairs at about 1 o'clock to see Leon off. I came back. They didn't want to let me back into the room again. And I said, "Excuse me, I've just come out of there." "Oh, you've had your turn, and it's COVID." And I said, "I don't give a continental about COVID. My son's gravely ill in there. I'm going in." And one of the big regrets in my life is not forcing the hand. And I stood there, and opposite me, the button to open the ward doors, there's a button there with a bottle of hand cleaner, and with a big sign that says, "Disinfect hands after pushing the button." And in the hour that I stood there, counted 60 doctors, nurses, paramedics went through there, bing, bing, bing. And of the 60, the grand total who sanitised their hands was 6. So that really reinforced in my mind that a lot of this was BS.
So they didn't let you in the room at that point?
At that point. And then I heard the ward that Ryan was in, 5 West. There are only 4 people in there. I've been in there earlier. So I knew who the other 3 people were. And code blue, 5 West. And I know what code blue is. Then my wife come charging out because 5 West was literally 20 metres around the corner. He was in distress. He couldn't breathe. All sorts of stuff. They had doctors and nurses all around the bed. We were escorted off into a waiting room, and the neurologist came in about 20 minutes, half an hour later, and said, it's not looking good. And I remember telling him, you've got to fight for him. You've got to move heaven and earth. You've got to fight for him. And I don't know, I couldn't tell you how long. 30 minutes later, said, we can go and see Ryan now. And he wasn't in the room, in the ward. It was in a single bed room with the curtain pulled across. As I'm walking in, I can see his feet are there. And I pulled the curtain back and he was gone. No more ventilator mask on him. He was gone. And I remember turning around and at the top of my lungs, yelling at the neurologist to bring him back, bring him back. I remember yelling that out about 3 times. And that was the worst. That was the worst. No idea we were going to lose him that day. I just thought it was a nosebleed and that was it. And during that time, they wouldn't let me into ICU with him. When we arrived at the ambulance, they wouldn't let me go in with him. Oh, it's COVID, it's COVID. And I said, listen, this COVID is all bullshit, honestly. After what happened at the hospital, I got in touch with the CEO. I got in touch with the health minister we had then. They did absolutely bugger all. I said, it was COVID, it was COVID. I said, well, how do you justify out of 60 professionals hitting the button and only 6 sanitising their hands, and then they're going to be treating patients? Oh, yeah, but they would have sanitised their hands again before seeing the patient. I said, well, they didn't sanitise their hands when they came in during the course of the time that I was sitting there with Ryan. So I was going to take it further. I know that Ryan would have said, Dad, don't worry about it. That's not worth the aggro. It's not worth whatever. And then we had another mum about 18 months later, similar situation. Took her son down out of ICU to the ward. They didn't put his ventilator mask on. So by the time they wheeled him into the ward, he was dead. They lost him. And I said, mate, if you want to take this further, I'm behind you. I'm with you. I'll hold your hand. We'll do whatever needs to be doing. But, to this day, I would love to get Dan in the same room and have words with him. I really would love to, for him to know what he did and the impact it had on me and my family and how it was done. And to now hear Brett Sutton, last 2-3 days, come out and say, yeah, we basically overstepped the mark. We really didn't know what we were doing. It was overkill. Give me a break, So I'm still trying to get over that side of it. I'm still trying to get over losing Ryan. I'm still trying to get over the fact that I was looking forward to spending a lot of time with him in his shed. And it was about, I think, 9 months after we lost him. We had an opening ceremony, had the ribbon, Tony, and about 40 people in our backyard with an opening ceremony of Ryan's shed, and that was fabulous. I wanted to turn it into a men's shed, but not for the general public because you don't know who's who, just the people who I knew. to come and spend time in there and make things. Bunnings were amazing. They supported the opening and donated a lot of stuff for Ryan Shed, which be forever grateful for. But yeah, that was a tough gig. But from day of diagnosis at 3 and a bit years of age to losing him at 40 plus 9 months, a lot of stuff happened in between. Some good, some not so good. A lot of good memories. Ryan didn't want a cure. I said, why not, mate? He said, well, if they find a cure for MD, I won't be able to go to Camp MDA anymore. I ran 107 camps. We provided hundreds of thousands of hours of respite. We trained about 4,000 tertiary education students, nurses, OTs, physios, as primary carers for a week. And for many, it was an amazing experience. And Ryan said, if they find a cure for MD, I won't be able to go to camp anymore. So that gave me a really good feeling in knowing that was something good that was done that he benefited from and others did as well.
So we'll come to a lot of that extraordinary work because there is a lot to unpack there that I want to get into. But
Sure.
I think it's really important that we go back to your foundations because you've got this extraordinary drive that wasn't just from Ryan, your son. It comes from your foundations as a child yourself, right? It sounded like your mum instilled some really good values. So tell us about Boris. Who was Boris as a child?
Oh, believe it or not, shy and bashful.
No way.
Yeah, I'm serious. I was a very unsure guy. Remember even in primary school, there was one of the girls in primary school. Still remember, I fell in love with her in grade 5, I think. And the last time I saw her was in high school on my last day at Maribyrnong High, where we shifted to Strathmore, and I then went to Strathmore High. I remember seeing Kay to say, mate, I won't see you again, but I wanted to ask her out, but it was and I would love to know where she is today. That's one of the things with probably not so much today, but with females getting married, they tend to change their surname.
Yeah.
I would love to know where she is. I'd love to put out a call on your show and say, hey, Kay, if you're out there somewhere, I want to meet you.
Hey, from Maribyrnong Primary, you know where we are? Reach out. I grew up in a house with Mum and my sister. And I don't know, Mum always said, people judge you by what you do and what you say and how you do it. Said, always give it 110%. And always did. I always wanted to be the best at, what I was doing. Even, I've got 2 right hands. I love woodwork, love metalwork, and I spent a lot of time in Ryan Shed. But I remember getting the highest score at that point at Maribyrnong High School for woodwork because I loved it. I loved doing it. I appreciated the feedback from the woodwork teacher, Mr. Ashton, who had his hand sort of looked like that. He lost about 3 fingers. And I thought, that's a good teacher with the saw.
I thought to myself, what example is this for a woodwork teacher who's minus fingers? Didn't dawn upon me at that stage, but when I reflected upon it later, probably not the best person to be teaching woodwork. But that aside, no, Mum always taught me to, give 110%. And I like excelling. I like getting the best out of, what I could do. And, as I always looked a bit older than what I was. So in high school, I used to go down to Spencer Street Station and line up at 7 o'clock in the morning. This is during the school holidays to land a casual job. And this would be offloading beer or tea chests of tobacco leaf from Myrtleford or, whatever. And I'd work for 2 weeks, then back at school. But I'd always give it, 100%, in what I was doing there. So that sort of work was casual, off the books, and so on. At that stage, God, I think I was earning, like $12 a week or whatever it was. It wasn't a great deal. But the tax man never saw any of it, so it didn't really matter because my name was Barry, and the boss would yell, "Hey, Barry, come and give us a hand over here. Barry, come over here." Oh, shit, he's talking to me. So that was, but probably my first full-time official job was at Caterpillar. The big yellow bulldozers and all of that. Fascinating place, and I was there for about 18 months, but my job was to go to shipping, get the landed cost of the equipment, use various formulas to price up the equipment to put on in the price book for sale by the dealers. And I got tapped on the shoulder, and the boss called me and he said, "Oh, look, you've had complaints about your work." I was mortified. I said, "What do you mean complaints about my work? I'm giving it 110. I mean, what do you want me to be doing?" He said, "No, I want you to slow down." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, you're doing a week's allocated work in 3 days and you're showing other people up and they're getting pissed off." I said, "So what? I've got to slow down and not live up to my expectations and my ethics and all of that and bludge out." So I took on the role of social club secretary. So the other 2 days I used to spend running events at Caterpillar for a while and then left the place, and that was it. But that was such a huge shock to be told I'm working too hard, too efficiently, and I'm showing other people up. It still didn't compute for me.
Yeah, it goes against the grain of everything you've been taught to this point.
Absolutely. But I was entrepreneur. That word,
entrepreneurial.
That's the one. You can cut that word out. We lived over the fence in Maribyrnong from what was then Tracy Speedway. That was the gravel speedway, solo sidecars and midgets and all of that. And because our back fence went onto the speedway, I used to jump the fence, get a pass out. Used to cost 5 and 6pence in the old currency. Showing my age, used to cost 5 and 6pence to get in, and I used to sell a pass out for 2 and 6. I'd come back home, jump the fence, get a pass out, sell another one, go home, jump the fence, get a pass out, and Mum used to work all week as a tailor, and she'd be earning about £20 a week. On one Saturday, I'd earn about £15 to £18 in jumping the fence and selling pass outs.
How good?
Yeah, I had that, how could I, and I often think I've never been driven by money per se, but I often think had Ryan not been diagnosed with MD, had I not wanted to make a difference for him and as a result for others by establishing MDA, sliding doors, what would I have achieved otherwise in life if I apply the jumping the fence and selling pass outs? If I applied that sort of, not philosophy, but looking at ways of making money and seeing an opportunity, what would have happened? I think I've turned out a better person. At least I hope I've turned out a better person. But
well, I certainly think you have.
Thanks.
So, yeah, let's go to the next chapter now. Tell us about the moment you found out you were going to be a dad for the first time. Take us back to that moment.
Well, Leon was number one. Ryan was number two. Totally unprepared. Had no idea. You know, what is this thing? What do I do with him?
I felt exactly the same.
It was. Look, things are different today. I'm sure they are. I think when I talk to people, what you said earlier on, like best thing that's happened to you and things like that. It was different for us in my era. There was not a division. That's not the right word, but I don't know. It was. I was surprised. I really, didn't know what to do with this little thing that I screamed its head off and filled its pants. So it was, to me, you couldn't communicate or in any meaningful way. But once I got older, it was fabulous. I mean, I look at before Ryan came along, the time I spent with Leon, and when Leon was older, because I was spending so much time with Ryan, at camp and fundraising and trying to make a difference. And unfortunately, I copped a bit of flack because no other parent wanted to volunteer their son for publicity. Oh, no, 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 no. So Ryan, I promise this will be the last time, but I need you for a newspaper or TV or whatever it may be. And he didn't want to do it. He did not want to do it. And even when I retired, ABC 7:30 report did a 8-minute story on me in my retirement. That was, broadcast and so on. I said to him, mate, I promise, this will be the last time I'll call on you. And by this stage, Ryan's speech was but a whisper. So the journo would ask him questions and he'd have them typed up on the screen. And in post-production, one of the guys was Ryan's voice. He read out, Ryan's answers. But it was always a challenge. He didn't want the limelight, but no other parent wanted to, give their kid up. It's different today. But then I cop flack from parents saying, oh, you're always pushing your own son. And I said, trust me, he doesn't want to do it. If you want to offer your son, please let me have him. Let me have him. So Ryan, it'd be fair to say he resented being, put in that position, particularly when he got older. When he was younger, it didn't matter. I mean, we got him a dog, this black and white poodle thing, whatever it was. We were told, my wife picked the dog up and I said, oh, it's rare. It's a Harlequin poodle. I said, oh, shit, it's rare. Anyway, she got in touch with the Poodle Association, whatever it was, and said, oh, we got this really rare poodle. And they said, oh, what sort is it? And he said, oh, it's what was it called? A Harlequin poodle. I said, yeah, they're bloody rare, all right. We had this dog, which Ryan loved the dog, and Buster would sit on his lap. And I've got a terrific photo, which was on the front page of the Herald Sun, of Ryan sitting in the driveway, Buster on his lap, looking around. And, Ryan was, 14, 15 then, and didn't worry and asked him to do that much later in life. Nah. So I was grateful for what he did, and I was sorry I put him through the not wanting to do the stuff, but having the, having the understanding that it was important for a spokesperson or for him to be, there. And when we opened our first research centre at St V's, Ryan cut the ribbon with the then Health Minister, Marie Tan. Ryan would have been 93, 13. He was 13 years of age when he cut the ribbon for the opening of the research centre. And that was fantastic, So he was always the driving force for me to try and achieve and do better for him. But as a consequence, I suppose I'd say camps were run for Ryan. All the other kids came along and they got the benefit of it. I'm not probably putting it the right way, but of course I cared about the other kids and they benefited from Camp MDA and the carers and so on. Yeah. But I was doing it for Ryan because, I was working 60 hours a week trying to raise the money to do all the things that needed to be done. And Ryan was missing out on me. So that was one way of giving back to him, I suppose.
Yeah. When did you first get the sense that Ryan had this condition, muscular dystrophy?
Probably, he started walking at a normal or average age. He was built very well. He had a terrific body on him. Leon was a bag of bones, and Ryan was stocky. His legs, his calf muscles, and little did we know, his calf muscles look fantastic because that's one of the symptoms of MD. Because the muscles are atrophying, they're shrinking. As they shrink, they pull a heel up, and the muscle gets bulkier. And I built a thing out of a bit of masonite, a bit of timber. It was literally a block of wood with block of wood with a ramp masonite, probably about 50, 60 mil high. And I put it behind the couch, and Ryan would watch his cartoons or whatever after school, but standing on this little plank, and that would his own weight would force his heels down and stretch the calf muscle. He was, we went from doctor to doctor to doctor, and they all said, oh, he's clumsy, he's pigeon-toed, he's all of the above. And in reality, it was in a couple of suburbs away from us was a shoe shop, and there was a retired shoe fitter, Mr. Murray, and he made up little boots for Ryan and so on. That didn't work. And then he said, I've got a colleague at the Children's. Might get you to see him. And he was a orthopedic guy. And we went in to see him. He had one look at Ryan, and I mean one look. I'm talking 15 seconds. And when you replay that video in your mind, you could see the ting, oh shit, I know what he's got. He'd diagnosed MD, or Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And he said, look, I might refer you to a colleague of mine. He's a neurologist. And to me, all I knew about neurology, it had to do with the brain. And trust me, there was nothing wrong with Ryan's brain. Finished up getting diplomas, and he got his BA, which is another story. We make a note of it, and I'll tell you about it. We went to see the neurologist, and he asked Ryan to lay on his tummy on the floor and get up as quickly as he could. And Ryan walked his hands up his thighs to stand up. A very, very typical trigger. That's called the Gowers movement. And he knew instantly what Ryan had. He knew. But went through the charade of getting the blood test, getting a muscle biopsy, and it was late that afternoon that we told him, go home, enjoy him. I've already told you the words.
Yeah.
Went out to the car, absolutely devastated. Parking ticket on the car.
Of course, yeah.
Start driving up the tollway. It was a freeway then, it's a tollway now. Driving up the freeway, get near the Essendon airport where you go under the dip at English Street. And Rod said, I'm going to pee really badly. I said, mate, not a problem. We pulled up on the side of the freeway, got him out. He's peed on the freeway, back in the car. We've driven home, and that was it. So that whole process, he was 3.5.
3.5. So yeah, probably didn't understand really what was happening.
No, not at all. And we tried to pack in as much as we could. We went up to Expo 88 up in Queensland. That was 8-10 days there. He had a ball. I remember he was still able to walk all the way up to Cavill Avenue. On the way back, he said, Dad, I'm tired. I said, mate, not a problem. Picked him up, had him on my shoulders, carried him back. And there was, every day was, yesterday was his best day. Tomorrow's going to be worse. And, that's what it was like. So,
how did this moment when he was diagnosed, how did that change the way that you were seeing the world at that point? And did you know a lot about the condition?
Knew bugger all. The only thing I knew was that it wasn't good. It wasn't good. But at that point, I did not know how not good it was, if that makes sense. Got home, pre-internet days, got home. Can you imagine a world without the internet?
No, I barely remember it because it was sort of just as I was becoming a teenager, dial-up came in.
Yeah, tell me about it. Yeah. I grabbed the encyclopedia, and it was literally, can't remember the exact words. It was a fatal muscle wasting disorder affecting boys. A fatal. I thought, front door, that's not good. So I knew it wasn't good, not good, up until, reading that. What pissed me off, and that's the only word I could use. So he knew from the time that we saw him to the time he had the blood test, the biopsy, and so on. He actually had to be booked in for that. And I think, can't remember, about 4 or 5 days to put together a kit of information, whatever. And we're told, and he says, I've got something. I've got something here for it. Just hang on a minute. Turns his back and he's looking. Then he hands me a little bit of paper that big, and it wasn't even like that. Still got 2 left. Hey, I drink my coffee, all right?
Look, I empathise.
On that little bit of torn paper was the name Pan with a Blackburn phone number. And he said, give her a call. She knows all about it. You're a doctor. You're telling me I've got to ring up somebody else? And that whole scene was just absolute bullshit. That's why we finished up funding a social worker for a short period of time. And then even now we fund Danny at the Children's Hospital. She's a neuromuscular nurse coordinator. Brilliant individual, just loves the kids, loves her, loves every element of MD, of what it means and what to do and how to support the kids and so on. So we fund that position. But yeah, it was, that whole diagnosis, the delivery was very, very poor. Different ball game today, but that's because, we've had conversations. I remember about three years ago, I did a presentation to, I don't know how many, it was in the big room at the Flemington Racecourse. It would have been 400 scientists, postdocs, and so on there. And I spoke about the diagnostic process and how I found out, or how I was told, and the absolute necessity for parents to link in with scientists and for scientists to link in with parents, to support each other, to understand each other, to know the motivation, and so on. I think it makes a difference. I remember coming home one night and came into Ryan's bed and was, oh, g'day, mate, how are you? And I wasn't in a particularly good, It was can't remember what happened during the day, but it was pretty exhausting. And he says, Dad, I don't know why you're doing this. I said, well, Ryan, I want to help find a cure for MD so we can get you out of the wheelchair and, go and kick a footy or whatever you want. His reply blew me away. It really did. But Dad, I don't want to get out of the wheelchair. This is me. The wheelchair is part of me. As an aside, one of the training things we did with the students who are going to be carers at camp was the fact that you don't walk up to one of the kids, put your elbow on the headrest and start talking to them. I said, how would you take it if I walk up to you and put my elbow on your shoulder and started talking to you? It's like, oh, hang on, same applies.
You must have. There must have been moments where you felt completely powerless, though, in those early years.
Oh, absolutely. There are people in life who make things happen. And there are people in life who sit there, they see something go whizzing past, oh, shit, what happened? I want it to be instrumental in one of the words I use for MD, for the initials, is make a difference. So, sorry, just to backtrack, Ryan said to me, I don't want to walk. So what do you want? He said, I just want enough strength in my hand that I can change the floppy, I can change the CD, I can pick my nose, scratch my bum, and that's it. He said, I don't want to walk. This is me. And I remember sitting on the floor at a conference with an eminent double doctor. He was a neurologist and a PhD. And this is in between sessions. I'm sitting on the floor. He's next to me, Jacques, in Toronto, I think it was, from memory. And I was talking about Ryan. I said, you guys, meaning scientists in general, you're thinking about this the wrong way. You're thinking about a systemic treatment, get up and walk. You're fixed. I said, no, you think about incremental. Work on the thumb and the forefinger. Give them strength. So, yes, they can pick their nose. They can scratch their bum. They can change the CD and then increase, make it the arm, scratch the back of the head. So don't go for the holy grail of a systemic treatment. Make it incremental. And what blew me away at the plenary session with nearly I think it was 1920, I think, from memory, scientists, didn't use Ryan's name, didn't use my name, and that's fine. He just said, I was talking to a parent, and we've got to change our thinking. We shouldn't be aiming for a systemic treatment. Of course, if that happens in a serendipitous way, fantastic. But let's work on incremental. Let's make small differences, because those small differences, could you imagine for Ryan, no longer yelling out, Dad, can you come and change the floppy or whatever? He can do it himself. The degree of independence that would provide would be fantastic. So, now Ryan had a great brain. Honestly, I'd want to get something, A, B, or C, and I'd say to Ryan, mate, can you do a bit of research and tell me, am I better off with A, B, or C, and give me the reasons? When these days you plug it in a chat GPT or Perplexity or whatever, that's how you got your answer. He'd go away and, 1 or 2 days later, he said, forget A, B, and C, you actually want J for these reasons. And he was right. he'd go and do all the research and tell me why, that was better. And that was part of, he was very much like me. I had a Meccano set when I was a kid. You probably don't remember those.
I do remember Meccano.
You do. Fantastic. Yeah. I'd love to know where all of my stuff is. But Ryan would pull everything apart. My mum was a tailor, and I've got her sewing machine here. It's a 1948 Pfaff, a German machine. Better than Singer. Brilliant machine, sewing machine. And Ryan, of course, got Tony. They were going to pull a machine apart, grease all the wheels and bearings and make it work better. Yeah, okay, they took it all apart, put it all back together again. Doesn't quite work the way it was designed to work. So I've got somebody who I know who's actually a sewing machine mechanic. He said, give me half an hour, I'll have it tweaked out for you. But he loved taking things apart. He wanted to see how they worked. And good on him. He used to say, I'm the only one in the family who's got a university degree. And I said to him, yeah, mate, you got a BA? He said, yeah. I said, you know what a BA stands for? He said, yeah, Bachelor of Arts. I said, no, it means bugger all. He said, don't like that. I said, do you know what a BS is? He said, yeah, it's a Bachelor of Science. I said, no, it's bullshit. I said, do you know what a PhD is? And he said, it's a Doctor of Philosophy. I said, no, a PhD is the same as a BS, except it's piled higher and deeper. So I didn't want to bring him down, but because he was so much, I'm the only one who's got a degree, I thought, hang on, mate. Yeah, you are, and you got a great brain, and we're proud of you for what you did. And it was brilliant to see him up on stage, to get his certificate at the hall at Deakin Uni in Geelong was what an amazing experience. It was absolutely fabulous. So, yeah, look, extremely, extremely proud of him. I've got a lot of regrets that I didn't say a lot of things to him. I wish I could get him back for one more day to say all those things. I still talk to him every morning, every night. When I go up, in the morning, go into his bedroom and got a couple of his photos there and his urn, and I'll talk to him in the morning. And last thing I do before I go to bed is talk to him before I go to bed. And I'd give anything to have him back here again. But not literally suffering, not being in the state that he was, because the last 2-3 months he deteriorated so much. It was, his speech was but a whisper. It was, yeah.
The people that aren't familiar with the condition that probably don't realise the long deterioration that it takes, and yeah, it's so awful to watch.
I said before about my favourite MD is making a difference. And I think you were just saying for people who don't know what muscular dystrophy is, I coined the phrase many, many years ago because, believe it or not, I went for a period of about 6 months. I couldn't say the word dystrophy. We go, blah, it just didn't work. So I started using the word muscle destroyer. And I think that conjures up a very vivid, unambiguous thing of what's happening. Muscles are being destroyed. So, yeah.
Absolutely. So what was the first seed of the idea that became Muscular Dystrophy Australia?
Making a difference. Literally making it. I've got to make a difference. I fought that hard to raise the dollars to buy our building in North Melbourne. And I know the blood, sweat and tears that went into that building. We run a day program there. We had 8, 9 kids. I shouldn't call them kids. They were young men, 18 years of age plus, including Ryan, would be in there 4 days a week with carers. And I was just looking, as I said before, I'm cleaning my office and I found an envelope. It's over there somewhere. Vanessa Morosi came in to meet the guys. You may know the name Sam Solomon, past world boxing champ. Sammy came in. He met with the guys. Carla Bonner from Neighbours. We had a lot of people come in and saw the guys. We ran a desktop sort of publishing course for them, graphic design. Kang and Tafe brought their tutors out. We used to do so much for the guys in that room at MDA. It was absolutely fabulous. I'd walk out of my office and sliding doors. I'd pull the door open about yay much and just look to see the joy and the interaction, between these guys, what they were doing and so on. That's, to me, you'd be familiar with, I'm sure, like me, you've watched it probably 10 times, the Castle, where, they're standing outside the High Court. And he said, this is not a house. This is a home. It's a home for these reasons. The one thing that the previous board did, we had a celebration of Ryan's life. We had the upstairs room with 60, 70 people. And the board announced the creation of the Ryan Adams Struk Memorial Research Fund with $1 million. And the intent was for a yet to be determined, but a percentage of net fundraising profit, 10% say, to be put into Ryan's fund, and for that to build and build and build. And we would fund research off the interest, leave the principal, but fund research out of the interest that's being earned. And we just need to formalise the last couple of bits and pieces on that. Been through the, all the motions have been done, all the things have been done. So I'm hoping that in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, 50 years' time, that the Ryan Adams Struk Memorial Research Fund will be making a difference, will be funding research, and Ryan's name will live on in perpetuity as being the catalyst for the creation of Muscular Dystrophy Australia. And to me, that's important.
Amen. Absolutely. I just want to go back to the foundations of this again. You took a massive risk underwriting a lease without knowing how you would pay for it when you were getting this off the ground.
Well, and not knowing how we'd pay for our first staff member either.
Yeah. What gave you the courage to do that and the wherewithal?
Courage. I wouldn't use the word courage. I think it was more the absolute need to do it to make a difference. And I keep going back to that acronym of MD in making a difference. And if I was going to make a difference, I'd have to do it boldly, It was a big call. It was a huge call, go to, oh, shit, do I sign it or don't I sign it? It was a hard call, but I had no choice. And my first desk for about 4 days was there was an old orange crate from the local supermarket. That was my seat behind the desk. I was sitting on an orange crate. Have I got an aversion to oranges now? No, I don't. It had to be done. It had to be done. I think if you go back to the, jumping the fence and selling pass outs for half price, I think there was that element of knowing that, I could do things to make it happen. I organised 5,000 yellow plastic ducks. We numbered them all, and we were going to float them down the Maribyrnong River during the Saltwater River Festival as a raffle. And I got in touch with Nick Hill, who was then the marketing director of Ansett Airlines. I said, Nick, I need a prize for a raffle. I get 50 calls like this a week. I said, yeah, but this is a raffle with a difference. Tell me about it. I said, well, we're going to dump 5,000 5,000 yellow plastic ducks in the Maribyrnong River and let the wind take them downstream to the finish line. And the finish line, I thought, what the hell do I use for that? So I got in touch with the Footscray Baths and said, can we borrow one of your lanes? And then we worked out the length of the lane, I think, from memory, is 25 metres. Wasn't long enough to go across the Maribyrnong River. So I said, okay, can we borrow 2 lanes? So we strung that across the Maribyrnong River. When I told him what we were doing, he says, okay, what are you going to do if there's no wind? And I said, well, that's where you come into it. I said, you're going to bring a DC-3 down here, up the engines and blow them up the river. He said, what do you want for a prize? And I said, look, give me return airfares for a family to Queensland to the Gold Coast and a week's accommodation. And we scored, I still remember the name, Ocean Blue Resort. And that was so easy to get. And I thought, this is easy. I don't know if you remember Quincy ME. It was Jack Klugman. He was a medical examiner. This is going back a few years. I remember hearing him on 3AW, and it was an interview. And I said, so, what else do you do? So I do a lot of volunteer stuff for muscular dystrophy in America. What? So I rang up 3AW. I said, look, can you put me through to Jack Klugman? They said, he'd left out. That was pre-recorded. He's left. So, shit, can you tell me where he is? And so we can't do that. And I said, look, my son's just been diagnosed with MD. Please, I need to get in touch with him. He was staying up in Little Collins Street. I wrote a letter to him, had it hand-delivered. He rang me on the landline that afternoon. I said, what can I do to help you? He said, I'd love to do a TV ad. And I said, well, you will need a script and we'll need the TV station to stump up for it. I got in touch with Sir Eric Pearce, who was the doyen of Channel 9. I said, Sir Eric, I've got Jack Klugman. I need to film him saying a few words about muscular dystrophy, encouraging donations. He said, well, you're going to need a script. So I went home, and at 3:00 I finished writing it. And I can still recite it right now. And that was, hi, my name's Jack Klugman. I've seen the tragedy of muscular dystrophy in America and throughout the world. This devastating, progressive, muscle-wasting disease strikes children in the sunrise of their life. Please go to your local branch of the National Australia Bank and make a donation. That was it. Gave that to Sir Eric, and he said, that's fabulous. Passed it off to Jack Klugman. We filmed it at the old Bendigo Street in Richmond, over the swimming pool. Went to air, and we got $2,500 in donations. And now we're going back to 1984, 85. And it was about 2 weeks later, we had a $50,000 donation. And I thought, oh, shit, if this is how easy it is to fundraise, I'm in. So it was just the luck, grabbing the opportunity, and, we started raffling off Harley Davidsons. And up until recently, I'd given away 75. But the first Harley, somebody said, oh, there's a music festival up at Broadford. Here's a phone number. Give him a ring and see if you can take him to the music festival. Sounds fabulous. So I rang up. Hello. I said, oh, mate, I understand you got a music festival. I want to bring up a Harley and raffle up some tickets for muscular dystrophy. Yeah, no worries. This is the address. Okay. All up, there's bloody police everywhere. I thought, what the hell's all this? They wanted to search my car. I said, mate, I'm only going to the music festival, and they've sort of looked at me. I said, we want to look in the boot of your car. I said, look, I'll do you a deal. I'll let you look in the boot of the car, but you've got to promise me you're going to buy a raffle ticket for the Harley hanging off the back of off the tow bar. So all the coppers came over, sold them heaps of raffle tickets, and come around the corner, and the music festival was the Hells Angels rock concert.
Perfect place for a Harley.
Yeah, but for me, for muscular dystrophy, hey, And I remember about 4 Harleys later, I was up on stage to do a talk about MD. Now, you've been on stage before. When you're in the audience, you look up at the stage is up at about 5 degrees. When you're up on the stage looking down at the people, it's about 90 degrees looking down. So I get up there and their PR manager, Baring, said, well, I want to introduce you to my very good friend, Boris. He's from MD. Mentally deficient.
Oh, no.
And I go, he couldn't say muscular dystrophy. So I get up there, grab the microphone. I found out later, people thought I was a comedy act being introduced like mentally deficient. And I just said, guys, I'm here to invite you to a fight. Yeah. So it's a fight for my son's life. Yeah. A fight that's been going on for 8 years. And then I started talking. Honestly, for the next 8-9 minutes, you could hear a pin drop. 8 guys came up to me afterwards, opened up their wallets, tears in their eyes, and said, here's for your son. I said, mate, this is for research. And I went back there about 4 or 5 times. They were great supporters. I grabbed a bit of cardboard one night, after listening to the Angels playing, which was fantastic. Got a bit of cardboard, put underneath the trailer of the Harley, left the biscuit tin with tickets on the trailer. Woke up in the morning thinking, oh shit, probably the money's gone, the tickets are gone. There was more money in there than the value of the tickets, which blew me away. And then I think one of the biggest gigs I had was up on stage in Sydney at the Olympic Stadium for the 100th birthday of Harley Davidson. I was the opening act for In Excess. I was wedged in between Ella Hooper, Killing Heidi, and In Excess. Got up on stage and spoke to 30,000 people about muscular dystrophy.
Wow.
And we raised $100,000 that night. So I suppose I always looked at anything is possible, nothing's impossible, and if you try, you just might succeed and you just might get there. So
absolutely.
I think in my time heading up MD, I think I saw the raising of about $43 million, establishment of a research centre, funding 9 PhD scholarships, running 107 camps. And I'd like to think I made a difference in the life of so many families and kids affected by MD, but most importantly, I know that in a different way, I made a difference to Ryan's life.
Absolutely, mate. Ryan would be super proud of you, and as we all are. It's certainly been wonderful, just from my own perspective. Watching how you've gone about things over the years, and incredibly inspired by your story. I want to touch on Camp MD8 because that seems like such a special initiative, mate. Tell me about how that came about, what it's about, and what it's done.
Ryan was very close with his cousin Chris, and during the school holidays, Ryan used to go around to his place. It was my wife's brother's place, and his wife. And this is the first year that Brian was in the manual wheelchair, and their house was far, far from being wheelchair friendly. There were 4 coffee tables in the room, 5 couches. Like there was no room to move. It was just, I thought, bloody hell, what do I do? Because I want to be out there. You should be fundraising. What do I do? So, and at that stage, already starting to, care for Ryan. Like, I don't know how you sleep, but God, I toss and turn during the night. I'm on my left, on my right, on my left, on my right. And it's with Ryan, it got to the stage where he couldn't very easily turn and he wanted to be moved and all of that. So he'd have to get out of bed. So you're running on, the smell of an oily rag, you're tired, all of these things. My wife did most of the getting out of bed because I'm out there all day and night, doing Rotary talks and presentations anywhere from Warrnambool to, Morwell to Albury, just all over the place trying to raise dollars and raise awareness. So because Ryan couldn't get into their house anymore, the idea of running a camp, we had 6 kids for the first camp. We had 10 kids for the second camp, and our biggest camp was at, I got in touch with the Puckapunyal Army Base. And I said, you've got a lot of land out there, 20,000 acres, and you've got lots of areas that aren't in use all the time. Would you sponsor a camp for our kids? And they said yes. So we had 106 kids and carers there. Amazing, amazing experience. The Army really laid it on. We had the School of Catering provided. One day lunch was flambéed garlic prawns. It was the most amazing experience. And, I love my photography, and I used to take a lot of photos at camp. And a couple of the service people got their dress white, and 3 of the boys, they dressed them up in their mesh uniforms, and there's Ryan sitting in there, white, they look fabulous, and they're sitting there with a glass of champagne, James Bond style. They were the experiences, and long story, which I won't go into, but I was looking for a particular place out in Tubarak to photograph, and I was at the general store, and the lady said, "No, I don't recognise this, but the lady sitting over there, she's a local. She might." So I walked up to her and said, "Oh, excuse me." And she's looked up and said, "Oh, Boris, how are you?" And I'm going, "Who the hell are you?" I didn't recognise her, and said, "Oh, I was a carer," and she rattled off the kid's name. I was a carer at Puckapunyal. I said, "You're kidding me." He said, "Yeah." So we sat down and we chatted for about an hour and a half. And we stayed in touch and actually rang her when we lost her own. But she said, "Do you know what?" Sandy said that the experience that she gained as a carer, how we educated, the exposure, the whole lot, how we prepared them for camp, put her in good stead. Now, she's the senior HR manager at a very, very significant organisation now. And she said, "I put it all down to that 1 week at Camp MDA and the training that you provided." So did it make a difference? Absolutely. In her case, in the case of the families, case of the kids, we had so many things that we did at camp. We invited the local Indigenous tribe over, and I said, "Oh, we'll go out there and we'll throw a few boomerangs." And I said, "Well, these guys can't throw boomerangs." I said, "No, we'll throw them, but we've got to wait till it's dark." Yeah, okay. So waited till it's dark. We've gone all outside and had the, probably, 70 centimetres across. But unbeknownst to me, they'd coloured LEDs in the boomerangs. And when they flew through the air, these amazing, colour swirls through the sky. And I thought, that's extraordinary, thank you very much. And at the end of the night, and I've got it in my lounge room, at the end of the night, they presented me with a didgeridoo.
Beautiful.
Really cool. We did, do you remember the band Magic Dirt?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Yep. What are their initials?
MD. Yeah.
They came around and performed at camp. And I'm looking, we used to take a lot of gear, and I see all these road cases and everything got MD all over them. I don't recognise these boxes. These ours. I go, duh, Magic Dirt. So, yeah, look, camp, thousands of students we trained. hundreds of thousands of hours of respite. Just the best thing that we did. The best thing that we did. Very, very proud of Camp MDA, but that went through a hiatus of about 4 years after I retired. And they ran the first one. It was a one-day event for about nine or 10 kids. And hopefully they'll get back into the big camps. But NDIS has made a big difference because these days, if the kid wants to go or the family wants to go to Queensland or whatever, they can do it through NDIS. So it's been a paradigm shift, but camps were just amazing. I got in touch with the Air Force in Canberra. And I said, what's the chance you can do a flyby at Bacchus Marsh of, the kids at camp? Honestly, it was about a 75-page contract, which I had to read every page, initial and God knows whatever else. And the flight lieutenant came out with his secure radio, and he was with us at Bacchus Marsh. And this guy flew down from Nowra or wherever it was into Essendon, whether they refueled or whatever. And then, we're ready, come in, the whole lot. 4 minutes later, straight over the treetops, did all the aerobatics, dummy bomb run, the whole lot. And then flew back to Canberra. And then one of the camps that we ran out in Coonawarra, out of near Sale. I got in touch with the Air Force base in Sale. I said, look, the roulette's practice. Can we come and watch them? I've got 42 or 45 kids. Can we come and watch them perform? I said, well, it'll have to be on a particular day. And we got down there and they put on a silver service barbecue. All the Air Force guys are dressed in their mess uniform, the whole lot. All the service barbecue. And we were in front of a big hangar. And he said, can you get all the kids to line up with their back to the hangar? I've stood in front and I said, guys, he said, you've got about 20 seconds. I said, right. But guys, just a quick word. Can you please show your appreciation to Royal Australian Air Force for hosting today's barbecue? And that's as far as I got. Next minute, over the roof, went vertical, the 6 roulettes, and they did the whole 8-minute roulette air show for us. It was, jaws dropping, the whole lot. They got a few screams. They got the rescue helicopter out, and they had a person in bright orange fatigues fell out of the helicopter. Everybody's thought it was a dummy, and they had to rescue the dummy, but everybody thought for one moment it was a real person fell out of the helicopter. Yeah, look, these are all things that were done to enrich and make a difference to the lives of so many kids.
What's one thing that people could do today to help people going through those difficulties with muscular dystrophy, to support families in need?
What can they do?
Yeah.
Get in touch with MD, or MDA, I should say. Get in touch with MDA. Whilst I'm retired, if a family's really, really desperate, they'd have to be desperate to want to talk to me. If I can be of any help talking with them, happy to do that. But you get in touch with MDA. There's a wealth of experience there. That's what we're there for, to support families, to offer advice and so on. And if members of the general community, if they want to help make a difference and perpetuate Ryan's name, make a donation to the Ryan Adams Struk Memorial Research Fund, care of the MDA. And that way, Ryan will live on in support of research and making a difference in his way to, the future generations of kids and families affected by MD.
We'll come into home stretch now, and I want to come to your your photography, because this is a love of yours, and
Yes.
you're bloody good at it too, might I add. Where did that love come from?
I've got we've got a grandson who's 4 years old, and it would be fair to say would have 4,000 photos of him. I've got 4 photos of me as a 4-year-old, and that's it, holding a box brownie camera. So I had a camera in my hands as a 4-year-old. I had a permanent darkroom. I used to do, a lot of black and white photography in film, and that was amazing. And I ran a session at MDA many years ago on how to develop photos, and to me, exposing a piece of paper, putting it in this liquid, and then watching it and seeing the latent image materialize, to me is still a wonder today. Okay, now it's all on this stuff. It's on the computer. It's it's a different level of creativity. But I ran a session one Saturday afternoon in Ascot Vale for the kids. I had about six, 7 or 8 kids there to watch this. I was all excited. I showed them one photo that was developed, and it came up, and okay, yeah, and they went off and did their own thing. one photo was enough to keep them interested, but no, just look, I like the creativity. I've got a very large garage for the cars. I've got a studio set up there. With the backdrops on reels. I like portraiture. I like photographing, particularly people. Love landscape. Now one of the only positives at the moment of the fact to get to travel a fair bit, and in fact, Leon and I are leaving at the end of October for 2.5 weeks in Namibia again, and Cape Town. So
amazing.
I want to photograph the Himba. They're the local tribe, and they're a very, very attractive people. But if people want to have a look at what I do, just go to my surname, Struk, struk.com.au. They can have a look at some of my work. No, I find it very enjoyable. I like to see the end result. One of the things that literally brought tears to my eyes was in Finland last year. Standing there, and it's on my website, photographing the Northern Lights. The whole sky was green, and I'm standing there saying, Brian, I hope you're here. I hope you can see what I can see. This is just absolutely extraordinary. But I brought a tear to my eye because it was just such a beautiful, natural thing to see. It was quite extraordinary. So, yeah. No, photography, love it. The only thing I don't like, the iPhone takes bloody good photos, not as good as what the big Nikon does, but to lug around 12, 13 kilos of camera gear in the bag, sometimes I think, do I leave all my camera gear behind and just rely on the iPhone?
Not with all the skill set you've built, and
you're very kind. You're very kind.
I'll put a link in the show notes to your photography because it's
beautiful.
It's amazing stuff.
Thank you.
And last question, mate, and we'll let you get on with your dinner. But you said resilience now means continuing forward after losing Ryan. What does that look like in real life day to day?
My wife tells me I'm depressed. I don't know if I am or not. I don't sleep well. I get about 2 or 3 hours. I wake up and I'll lay there for an hour and a half from 2:30 till 4 o'clock in the morning, then fall back asleep again. Constantly thinking about Ryan, what I could have done, should have done differently. But life is finite. I've really got to get on with living and make most of the time that I've got. I can't change the past. Just got to hope that, I come out of it better than, and I'm sure I will. Sure I will. But when you've lived and devoted so much of your life to fighting this bastard of a disorder, it changes you. It changes you. I told you before, I was a very shy, quiet person when I was much younger. Today, I don't care who's in front of me. I could just as easily talk to, I don't know. I'd love to meet Elon Musk. If you're listening, Elon, I'd love to meet you. I'd be just as comfortable talking with Elon Musk as Donald Trump, as, anybody else. People don't worry me now. I can talk to anybody. When I look at that from the shy individual that I was, that's certainly a bit of a turnaround.
Last one. Well, again, mate, we'll get all those links off you and put them in the show notes. Yeah, it's a really important one and super important to me as well. I'm blown away by you, mate. We could do a whole series of podcasts on you. We've only really just scratched a bit of the surface today.
Anytime you want to. Anytime you want to. Would love to catch up for a coffee.
We need to do that. Absolutely.
And better still, would love for you to come around and see Ryan shed and, what we do. Above his lathe, one timber, both Ryan and I like Jarrah, Western Australian timber. I've got this huge Jarrah panel behind his lathe with his photo. And I used to be a measure once, cut, I mucked that up, cut it again. Excuse me, whereas Ryan is measure 5 times, cut once. And every now and again I'll stuff something up. And I just turn around, look at his photo and just say, oh, Ryan, I stuffed that up, didn't I, mate? So in a lot of ways, he's with me in Ryan's shed, and I'd love for you to come around and have a look. And, if you've got 2 right hands, have a go at making something.
Well, let's lock it in, mate. I'd love that.
Good. All right.
That was Boris Struk. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Drop Balls and Big Calls. We'll put some links in the show notes so that you can donate to Muscular Dystrophy Australia. Again, really important cause, funding research and providing a lot of support to families out there in need. So whatever you've got, it all makes a difference. So I'll put the links in the show notes. If you've got some feedback for the show, feel free to send us an email, jason@bigcallspod.com.au. Good, bad, the ugly, whatever you want to send through. We'd love to hear your feedback. If you're interested in sponsoring the show, there's 2 ways to do that. If you're a business, you can get in touch with me through the same email. Or you can go to setbackcollective.com.au. You can make a donation through there to the show. It goes towards funding new equipment so we can keep building the show, doing in-person interviews and making sure that we're getting the reach that we need to grow the show and get more guests. On the guests, if you do have any suggestions, we'd love to hear. Referrals are the best source of lining up interviews for these things, and we're always looking for new guests. So if you've got a recommendation, feel free to get in touch. But above all else, just, again, grateful for you being here and listening. Make sure you like, follow, and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast. We're all over social media as well. Just look up Big Calls Pod and you'll find us. But again, thank you so much.